in also. So I want to deal with this topic. I first posted an article about this on Entertainment Weekly, and I've had a number of people send me articles about this topic. They tagged me in posts. A number of people responded to the article I posted from Entertainment Weekly on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, as well as my personal page, Michael Imhotep. And it deals with the movie Harriet, right? The movie Harriet, the biopic about abolitionist Harriet Tubman, escaped from slavery in 1849 from a plantation in Maryland. And there was a interview that took place on November 3rd, 2019, okay, with Greg Allen Howard. Now, Greg Allen Howard was one of the screenwriters for the film Harriet, okay? And he talked about a meeting back in 1994 with the studio executive. And this was when he was first dealing with the film Harriet. And he talks about how a studio executive suggested, a white studio executive suggested that white actress Julia Roberts played the part of Harriet Tubman. Okay, so a lot of people going crazy about this. You have people who just read the headlines and don't actually read. You have people read the headlines and don't actually read suggested that white actress. You have people that read the headlines and don't actually read the full article, etc. Okay, how's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also, because this type of conversation you're not going to hear a whole lot of other places. I'm just telling you right now. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to break this down and give you some background information, and I'm going to share the interview with you as well. Okay, so we're going to discuss Harriet Tubman, screenwriter, says a Hollywood exec suggested that Julia Roberts play Harriet. Luckily, this did not happen, okay? But why are you surprised? This is Hollywood, or some people call it Hollyweird. So when I saw this, I wasn't that surprised. Why? Well, because if you study the movie Panther, which came out in 1995, directed by Mario Van Peebles and Melvin Van Peebles, the father and son, Melvin the father, Mario the son. They did an interview where they talked about when they were shopping the movie around to different studios, there was one white executive who suggested they create a white Black Panther. A white Black Panther, because they wanted to cast, because one of the studios wanted to cast a Brad Pitt or a Tom Cruise as a white Black Panther. And Melvin and Mario had to explain to them there were no white Black Panthers, okay? But this is Hollywood, okay? And they are trying to get bankable names to headline these projects so they could get a return on their investment. Now, was it stupid to suggest Julia Roberts? Yeah, of course. But once again, I've been studying media for 27 years. I've been studying Hollywood. It does not surprise me. Okay. So let's look at this article here. So the first article I saw about this was from Entertainment Weekly from November 19, 2019. Julia Roberts was suggested to play Harriet Tubman by studio exec, says Harriet screenwriter. Okay, and Gregory Allen Howard is the co-screenwriter along with Cassie Lemons, the director. And then also African American business owners post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with us. Shout out to everybody that's watching this. Let's see, let me just give you a quick shout out to Mary, Alexis, Asafo, Asante, Jope. Many people mispronounce it as Diop. D-I-O-P is Jope. We got Kenneth, Michelle, Sandra, R.S. Temple, Bona, Michelle, McDuffie, Sherwin, just a few people watching, Cedric. Okay, so let's look at this article. When someone pointed out that Roberts could not be Harriet, the executive responded, "It was so long ago, no one is going to know the difference." But and you have to understand like the history of Hollywood and how racist on one hand or bigoted, but just also just insensitive and ignorant on the other hand, some executives are. Now, once again, this was in 1994. Okay, this is so people saw the article that was picked up by the LA Times, and people saw these articles that surfaced November 19th, and they think that this executive said this like in 2019 or 2018. No, this is 25 years ago. It was dumb, but still, you know, luckily this did not happen. All right. So if you were to think of the most out of left field actress to play Harriet Tubman in a movie, you still wouldn't stumble upon the person one executive allegedly suggested. So in an interview with, it was a question and answer session with Gregory Allen Howard early this month from November 3rd, I think it was, November 1st, 2019, with Focus Features. They did a Q&A with them. And it's entitled Print the Legend, Writing the Screenplay for Harriet, okay? A Q&A with screenwriter Gregory Allen Howard. And he talked about this in this questions and answers session. The LA Times published this on November 19th, Tuesday, November 19th, and then all hell broke loose. So Gregory Allen Howard recalled how, quote, the climate in Hollywood was very different, end quote, some 25 years ago. The climate in Hollywood was very different some 25 years ago. He said, I was told how one studio head said in a meeting, this script is fantastic. Let's get Julia Roberts to play Harriet Tubman, Gregory Allen Howard explained. He said, quote, when someone pointed out that Julia Roberts could not be Harriet Tubman, the executive responded, quote, it was so long ago, no one is going to know the difference, end quote. So we don't know who this executive was. We don't know if this executive is deceased, if they are no longer working at a studio, what have you. So thankfully for everyone involved, Julia Roberts was not cast as Harriet Tubman. Decades later, the film would become a reality, which Gregory Allen Howard said is thanks to two groundbreaking films that changed the game for representation. One, 12 Years a Slave. Two, the film Black Panther. He said, when 12 Years a Slave became a hit and did a couple of $100 million worldwide, I told my agent, quote, you can't say this kind of story won't make money now. Then Black Panther blew the doors open, okay? So Black Panther, and I do lectures dealing with the film Black Panther. Some of you all have seen excerpts of my lectures, you've been in my lectures dealing with the film Black Panther. Black Panther is really opening the door for a lot of other movies. And Harriet is a different type, even though it's a movie dealing with slavery. It's different because this is the first movie to where the central character is Harriet Tubman, first theatrical movie. Now there was a woman called Moses in 1978 made for TV, but this is the first theatrical movie where Harriet Tubman is the central figure. But also the film tells a larger story of the Underground Railroad, who actually ran the Underground Railroad, because a lot of people don't know that the majority of the people who ran the Underground Railroad were not white people, they were African Americans. Former runaway slaves, African Americans born free. You have people like William Steele. William Steele is portrayed in the film, and William Steele was a free African American man living in Philadelphia who was wealthy, who was helping to finance the Underground Railroad. And not only that, William Steele records the history of the Underground Railroad, records the history of those runaway slaves. They helped to escape to freedom. And he writes a book in 1872 called The Underground Railroad. So the majority of what we know about the Underground Railroad comes from William Steele recording the history. But this is somebody the average person doesn't know about. They know some about Harriet Tubman, and a lot of what we learned about Harriet Tubman in schools was false, okay? But they don't know about William Steele. So November 3rd, 2013, on the African History Network show, my show, I had fellow historian Jamon Jordan on, and we dealt with the film Harriet. We broke it down from a historical perspective. We separated fact from fiction. I provided you with numerous articles, numerous sources for more historical, accurate information about Harriet Tubman, etc. All right. So it's on Facebook and it's on YouTube. We're going to post a link here. Go watch that. If you've seen the movie, watch the show that we did. If you haven't seen the movie, watch the show that we did. You're going to learn a lot, and we give you numerous sources for you to use to teach your children the history, whether you do homeschooling, whether you are a teacher. These are resources you can take into the classrooms to teach our children and teach children in general about the history of Harriet Tubman, the Underground Railroad, slavery, etc. Okay, because most of what we know about the history of slavery in this country is false. Okay, we're commemorating August 20th, 1619, its 400th year anniversary, right? But codified slave laws didn't exist in the 13 colonies in 1619. Most people don't know this. Codified slave laws did not come into the colonies until 1641, starting with Massachusetts, and they hit the colonies at different times. If you read Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr., he breaks this down. He talks about this in chapter 2. Then also in the back of the book, when you deal with milestones in history, okay, he deals with this. If we look at, let's see, 1641, December 1641, Massachusetts became the first colony to give statutory recognition to slavery. Other colonies followed: Connecticut, 1650, Virginia, 1661, Maryland, 1663, New York and New Jersey, 1664, South Carolina, 1682, Rhode Island and Pennsylvania, 1700, North Carolina, 1750, 1715, North Carolina, Georgia, 1750. This is when codified slave laws are coming to the various colonies. The whole way this thing evolves is totally different than the way most people think this happened. And then states are abolishing slavery on their own at various times. By the time the U.S. Constitution is signed in 1787, September 17, 1787, 5 states had already abolished slavery. Vermont was the first state to abolish slavery in 1777. You have Connecticut, you have Philadelphia, you have Massachusetts, things like this. So we don't understand, most African Americans and most Americans in general are woefully ignorant of history. And you can't understand what's going on today until you understand the history of all of this, all right? 246 years of slavery, decades of Jim Crow segregation, redlining, all of this history is tied together. All right. So this is why the history is so important. And the people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. But when we look at the film Black Panther, how's everybody doing? When we look at the film Black Panther, one of the reasons why the film Black Panther was so successful is that it was not another slave movie, because a lot of people are tired of slave movies, even though different stories need to be told. The story of Solomon Northup, told in 12 Years a Slave, that was based upon a true story. Solomon Northup wrote a book about being captured, born free, being captured, and taken into the South into slavery, okay? And we're going to see that this becomes a business, especially after 1808. 1808 is when, January 1st, 1808 is when the international transatlantic slave trade is abolished in this country. Federal law is abolished in this country because that was passed by Congress March 2nd, 1807, okay? Because March 2nd, 1807. And why did that happen? So March 2nd, 1807, the U.S. Congress passed a law to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade, meaning the bringing Africans into the country and enslaving them, right? Now, you could still have slavery on plantations. You could still sell slaves, things like this within the U.S., but bringing Africans into the country was made illegal, federal law. This goes into effect January 1st, 1808. Why does it go into effect January 1st, 1808? The reason why is because of Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Unfortunately, many African Americans don't understand the U.S. Constitution. But the Constitution is the foundational law in this country. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution clearly tells you that the U.S. Constitution, all of the previous treaties and all of the subsequent treaties are the supreme law of the land. Unfortunately, we don't understand any of this stuff, okay? So if we look at Article 1, you look at Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808. That's 1808, 1808. But a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation, not exceeding $10 for each person. So that law goes into effect January 1st, 1808. That's stipulated by the U.S. Constitution. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1793, and then the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which is even harsher and allows for the return of runaway slaves who are going into free territory, allows for their return, and it abolishes the requirement for them to have a trial. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1793 and the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, the foundation of that is Article 4, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution. So the Constitution is the foundation of all of this, but we don't understand law and we don't understand history. So we don't understand how to navigate throughout this system. So when we see the movie Harriet, we see that the Fugitive Slave Act is a main character in the movie, because we see that this causes more runaway slaves to now go into Canada as opposed to just going up north. And there was a scene where there was a riot that took place because of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Now, Harriet Tubman was not part of that riot as depicted in the film, but there were riots that took place. So oftentimes in historical movies based upon a true story, what they do is they take a central character and then they use that central character to tell a greater story based upon history. Story of the Underground Railroad, story of the abolitionists, African-American abolitionists, all different types of things like this, okay? So none of these historical movies are 100% accurate, whether they're African-American historical movies, white historical movies, whether it's Lincoln, whether it's Panther, whether it's Rosewood. The main character in Rosewood of Man, played by Ving Rhames, was a fictitious character. He didn't exist. But he's most likely a composite character that John Singleton created that embodied the actions of actual real people. This is how, when you deal with, see, these are not documentaries. And I understand documentaries because I'm in 7 documentaries. These are not documentaries. These are Hollywood productions based upon true stories. That doesn't mean what you see in the film is true. None of these movies are 100% historically accurate. If you're writing a script for a movie, where does the script come from? You have to make up the script. Now, you're going to read narratives, you're going to read autobiographies, you read history books, and then you take a compilation of what real people said and put that into the mouths of the various characters. Real characters, fictitious characters, whatever it is. This is how you make these Hollywood movies, okay? A lot of us don't understand this. We think based upon a true story means everything that you see in the movie is true. Who the hell told you that? I don't know where you got that from. No, that's not how you make movies. These are movies. These are not documentaries, okay? Unfortunately, many of us don't understand the difference, but none of these historical movies are 100% accurate. Whether you talk about Panther, whether you talk about Selma, whether you deal with the movie that, I forgot the movie that Cuba Gooding Jr. played in, along with Robert De Niro. He was like the first Navy, he was in the Navy and he was like a deep sea diver, something like that, right? The character that Robert De Niro played didn't even exist. None of these movies are 100% accurate, okay? All right. So let's continue with this. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. Be sure and go watch the African History Network show from November 3rd, 2019, where we really go deep into this and break down this history, okay? And we've got Shanika. He said that the guy replied that it was many years ago and that no one would remember. Yeah, talking about Harriet Tubman. Well, and you know, Donald Trump is a perfect example of that because I'm not even sure. I don't think Donald Trump knew that Frederick Douglass was dead. You know, and I'm not even sure if he knows that Harriet Tubman is dead. Okay. Uh, all right. Okay, so let's continue here. But 12 Years a Slave and the movie Black Panther really opened the door for Harriet to finally be made and other movies to be made, and other movies will be made also. Okay. But it's tricky trying to get these types of stories made in Hollywood. And it doesn't matter whether you own a studio or not. Okay. Just owning a studio is not all there is to it. You have to get distribution. You have to get it shown in theaters. And a lot of African American movies, just like Harriet was shown on 2,059 screens, whereas a lot of dominant white movies are shown on 4,000 screens. The number of screens that the movie is shown on drastically impacts how much money the movie makes. Okay, but Harriet has made a profit. Harriet in the first 10 days made $24 million. So the people who were trying to sabotage the movie and hoping the movie failed and saying, oh, it didn't meet expectations, it cost $17 million to make the movie. In 10 days it made 24 million. You can go to boxofficemojo.com, to look at the box office numbers for the movies. Okay, boxofficemojo.com. That's how you can keep track of that. All right, so the writer who's also behind the acclaimed movie. So Gregory Allen Howard is the co-screenwriter of Harriet. He's also behind acclaimed movies Remember the Titans, starring Denzel Washington, Ali, starring Will Smith. Okay, the movie Ali wasn't 100% historically accurate. Love the movie Ali. Wasn't 100% historically accurate. The movie that Will Smith played, where he played the Nigerian doctor who discovered CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, the degenerative brain disease that a lot of football players have. Okay, that movie wasn't 100% accurate. None of these historical movies are 100% accurate. So he also discussed why he chose Cynthia Erivo, an African-British actress, to play an African-American activist. He said, I first saw her when the other producers flew me to New York to see her in the movie The Color Purple. Okay, Gregory Allen Howard said. He said, quote, as soon as she opened her mouth, I thought, yes, that's Harriet. Afterwards, I emailed the other producers, that's Harriet. She's a little stick of dynamite, end quote. Now, Harriet Tubman's story has long been in various stages of development in Hollywood. Viola Davis was set to produce and star in such a biopic at one point. The new movie, directed by Cassie Lemons, also stars Leslie Odom Jr., Joe Alwyn, and Janelle Monáe. Okay, let me go to this. So this is the article from entertainmentweekly.com, all right? And let me put this here. Now, some people, you know, would I have liked to see an African-American actress play Harriet Tubman? Yeah. Yeah. But what I think some people forget is that African-American actors and actresses also play Africans as well. So it goes both ways. Nelson Mandela was played by Terrence Howard. Idi Amin was played by Forrest Whitaker. Will Smith played the Nigerian doctor who discovered chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Denzel Washington portrayed Stephen Biko, Bantu Stephen Biko, one of our great South African freedom fighters in the 1987 movie Cry Freedom. We see this going both ways. People only highlight the example that supports their argument. They don't highlight the other examples. So we see this going both ways. Would I like to see an African-American actress play her? Yeah, okay. But we don't talk about the examples where African-American actors and actresses play Africans. Okay, we just ignore that. All right. Concussion, yeah, Tawanda said concussion. They never put African American films in as many theaters as other films. Yeah, and so that's one of the challenges, getting it on 4,000 screens. Because if you can get a movie on 4,000 screens or 3,500 screens, like a lot of the white movies, they would generate more money, generate more profit. Okay. All right, let's continue here. So let's look at the actual interview that this was based upon. All right. And what I want to do before we go to the actual interview, let's do this. The movie Panther, directed by Melvin Van Peebles and Mario Van Peebles, came out in 1995. As I said in the beginning, I saw one interview with them when the movie came out where they talked about they were shopping it around with the different studio execs. And they talked, and one of the execs suggested they create a white Black Panther. All right. This is dealing with bankability, having a white star starring in the film so they can guarantee ticket sales. All right. And it's dumb, but I understand this because I studied Hollywood, and this is one of the books that I read in my study of media and Hollywood. I've been studying media for 27 years. How many people have read this book? How many people know who Donald Bogle is? Donald Bogle is the godfather of African-American cinema. Donald Bogle is the man. This is Blacks in American Films and Television, an illustrated encyclopedia. This is an encyclopedia of all the African-American TV shows and movies up until about 1987, 1988. So any movie or TV show that had any type of significant African-American character in it is chronicled in this book, in this encyclopedia, just like Beverly Hills Cop right here, 1984. All right, they give you a synopsis, tell you who starred in it, who produced it, who directed, all of that stuff. So you have movies going back to The Birth of a Nation, 1915, and then he deals with some history of Hollywood. So what Tyler Perry is doing today with the Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta, and a lot of people don't know, Black Panther was the first movie filmed at Tyler Perry's new studios in Atlanta. A lot of Black Panther, the film Black Panther, was filmed in Atlanta at Tyler Perry Studios. Okay, so Atlanta really is like Wakanda. See, a lot of people don't know this, but you had African-American film directors, and you had 150, we owned about 150 production companies in the early 1900s. You know, I talk about this in my presentation dealing with Black migration, 1619 to 2019, Black migration, 1619 to 2019. And, you know, this is the year of return. This is the 400th year anniversary of August 20, 1619. Now, a couple of things that we have to understand, because I forgot to say this. The Spanish were taking Africans into the territory called South Carolina 93 years before 1619. In 1526, this gets left out. I did a whole presentation. I did a broadcast dealing with that. Okay, so go check that out. Before 1619, it was 1526. But also, Africans were in this land we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago. And this is what Dr. David Imhotep deals with in the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Okay, so most of us don't understand any of this history. This was our land stolen from us. Okay, these were the Khoisan, who have the oldest DNA on the planet. They come from Southern Africa. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa, and they go all around the world. Okay, and they were here. All right, this is before Native Americans come into existence, because Native Americans are the offspring of an intermixing of Africans and Asians. Asians come here around 3000 BC, and they are the offspring of an intermixing of Africans and Asians. All right, these are people who we call Native Americans. The other thing that happens is that you have groups of African people who were here who get reclassified as Native Americans when European settlers come here as well. So this is the whole history gets mixed up. So we don't understand the chronology of history going back tens of thousands of years. And the whole history gets mixed up because we were told that we first came here August 20th, 1619 on that White Lion pirate ship. right? And those 29 Africans were exchanged for food and supplies and water in Virginia. That did happen, but we were here for tens of thousands of years before that. This was our land stolen from us. So what happens when African people understand our real history and understand that, you know, we were here before Native Americans came into existence? This is our land taken from us. We did not first come here conquered by Europeans, shackled and chained. Okay, I'm not saying the transatlantic slave trade did not exist. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. No, the transatlantic slave trade did happen, but you have to understand tens of thousands of years of history that take place that lead up to the transatlantic slave trade happening. And you also have to understand the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. Because in Europe from 711 AD to 1492, and the Moors are still there after that. Some of them are still there after that. Some are going to be, some are being conquered by the Spaniards and being enslaved and taken into Spanish territories, like Florida and South Carolina, things like this, right? So we don't understand how all this history comes together. But if we look at this right here, let me show you this slide from my presentation, Black Migrations 1619 to 2019. And Black Migrations was this year's annual theme for African American History Month. So unfortunately, many of our people celebrate African American History Month, what used to be called Black History Month. Okay, co-founded by, founded by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Okay, that started the second week in February 1926. But we don't know there's an annual theme for African American History Month, which gives us purpose, which gives us direction, which gives us some type of framework to have the celebrations and do the research. So this year's theme was Black Migrations, okay, dealing with not just the transatlantic slave trade, but also the migrations of African Americans in the 20th century during the Great Migration, 1915 and 1970, where 6 million African Americans migrate from the South up north and out west, and the Great Migration totally changes this country. But a lot of people don't know that African Americans were fighting back against negative images that we saw in the media by producing our own movies. So African Americans have been making our own movies since the movie The Birth of a Nation came out in 1915. The Birth of a Nation debuts February 8, 1915, directed by D.W. Griffith. It's the most expensive movie at the time, cost $100,000 to make. It calls Race Riots in the Streets, and this movie rejuvenated the Ku Klux Klan, which had largely died out by 1915, because the Ku Klux Klan was founded December 24, 1865, about a week or so after the 13th Amendment is ratified. And so you're dealing with 1915 is the 50th year anniversary of the Civil War ending, 50th year anniversary of enslaved Africans, of chattel slavery ending, and the 50th anniversary of the Ku Klux Klan being founded. This is 1915. 1915 is also the second year of World War I, which starts in 1914. The U.S. gets involved in World War I in 1917, and 1915 is also the beginning of the Great Migration as well. So we had about 150 production companies, some completely owned by African Americans, others partly owned by African Americans that produce our own movies. So this is not new. You know, Robert Townsend, Spike Lee, Tyler Perry, what they're doing is good and needed, but we were also doing this in the early 1900s, but many of us don't know this history. So Oscar Micheaux, as pictured here, is the most well-known director of that era. From 1918 to 1948, Oscar Micheaux directed or produced 44 movies, okay? So read the book, Blacks in American Television and Blacks in American Films and Television, an illustrated encyclopedia by Donald Bogle. I think it's out of print. I don't even take this book out of the house. Check with your local book dealer, see if you can get it, check on Amazon. But this is a deep book, all right? And if we look at page 3, they break down a lot of this history. And you had, he talks about afterward scores of other film companies, Rio Productions, R-E-O-L, Rio Productions, the Unique Film Company, the Norman Film Manufacturing Company, the Frederick Douglass Film Company, some Black-owned, others white-controlled, sprang up in places as diverse as Jacksonville, St. Louis, Philadelphia, Chicago, and New York, often using the abandoned studios of mainstream film companies that had moved to California. Their low-budget films, frequently technically crude and mishapen, were shown at segregated theaters in the South, at big city ghetto movie houses in the North, and on occasion at Black churches, schools, and social gatherings. Almost any place where it was possible to reach a Black audience. So we owe two theater chains, the Lincoln Theater chain and the Lafayette Theater chain also. And you had George and Noble Johnson. Okay, George and Noble Johnson. These were legendary filmmakers also. Okay, but these are things that we're doing in the early 1900s. But a lot of people don't know this history. There was a whole industry called race movies. Race movies. There was a documentary, I think I saw it on Aspire. And there was a documentary called, what is that? Because I recorded it in 2015 and I still have it recorded. I DVR'd it. Let's see, what is the name? In the Shadows of Hollywood. In the Shadows of Hollywood, okay? And this is a documentary about an era when African-American filmmakers and studios produce movies aimed exclusively at a Black audience, okay? This is a documentary that came out in 2007, and it aired on Aspire TV on March 1st, 2015. I know because I still have a DVR from like 4 years ago. I've got to actually find it on DVD, something like this. But it's called In the Shadow of Hollywood, In the Shadow of Hollywood. And they go through and they break down this history of all these types of different genres of movies that we were making, okay? Love stories and action movies and suspense movies, thrillers, Westerns, all different types of movies we were making. Dorothy Dandridge, who starred in Carmen Jones, I think it was 1958. Before she was in Carmen Jones, she was in race movies. Lena Horne was in the race movies, okay? So this is a deep history that we have, but a lot of our people don't know this history. All right, let's see here. How's everybody doing? Hey, if you like this type of information, also you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. That helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. It helps finance our Sunday night show, helps us to pay the bills, helps to cover expenses when I have to travel out of town. So we definitely need your help. paypal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button. Then also African-American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. Email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com will let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. We have a few slots left. Our current promotion is get 3 months for the price of one. And my latest presentations are in a 6 DVD bundle pack and 6 digital download bundle pack. It's the Black Migrations bundle pack, 1619 to 2019. The Black Migrations bundle pack, Year of Return, okay? And it includes Black Migrations 1619 to 2019. Let me see where it is. It includes Black Migration 1619 to 2019. It includes 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how laws and policies impacted economic conditions of African Americans, when Black men dominated horse racing and how organized effort forced them out, because a lot of the early Kentucky Derbies, African American jockeys won. The first Kentucky Derby was ran 1875, and that was won by a 19-year-old African American man named Oliver Lewis. This is Jimmy Wink Winkfield, who won the Kentucky Derby in 1902. This is Isaac Murphy, another Kentucky Derby winner. So African-American men used to dominate horse racing, and we were winning these major races, but there was an organized, unionized effort of Europeans to push us out of horse racing. This one right here, the little known history of why African Americans switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. And I deal with the Southern strategy in 1928, which started to push us out of the Republican Party. So we started shifting over to the Democratic Party over time. Many people think it was because of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That's not true. By 1960, 2/3 of African Americans had already switched over to the Republican Party, and to the Democratic Party, and we were transitioning because we were being pushed out of the Republican Party by Herbert Hoover and Republicans. They were trying to appeal to Southern segregationist Democrats to get their candidate, Herbert Hoover, elected as president in 1928. And the Democratic Party over time was more receptive to our issues and concerns because the Republican Party was increasingly ignoring the issues and concerns of African Americans, especially during the Great Migration as we're moving into a lot of these northern cities. And also you have the rise of the Ku Klux Klan because it had been rejuvenated by the movie The Birth of a Nation in 1915, and the KKK was a huge force in the 1920s. Okay, they had a rally at the U.S. Capitol building in 1926, the Ku Klux Klan. Then also the last presentation you get in this bundle pack, Ancient Africans in America Before Columbus or Slavery from Kemet to Wakanda. Ancient Africans in America Before Columbus or Slavery from Kemet to Wakanda. Okay, so the DVD bundle pack is $50. The digital downloads are $40. We posted the link here. It's also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, we got Warren, we have Marnice, Harriet. Black Americans are undervalued, underestimated, and under marginalized. Joe Madison, the Black Eagle. I add underrepresented. Hashtag Harriet Tubman. Okay, how you doing, Harriet? We got Brenda, Mo Upshaw, Garrett, Jackie. Just a few of the people watching. Let's go to the let's go to this segment here from this was on Charlie Rose's show on PBS in 1995. He interviewed Mario Van Peebles about the film Panther. Here's what he said about. He was asked a question: how historically accurate is the film Panther? Here's what he said.
Panther and enjoy the movie. I don't know what he's doing now, how politically active he is. But how accurate is the movie? How much dramatic license did you take? Well, what we did was we took a fictional character and let the fictional character take us through real life situations. So, for example, in the clip you have, it goes to the Capitol. And this is a scene we used exact wardrobe as I showed you in some of those pictures in the making of. I mean, down to the wardrobe, everything, every little detail, because you've got to research these things. These folks are all alive. But we use a fictional character to take us through, because one of the things the Panthers did was they delegated responsibility. So if you just do the Huey story, you don't go to the Capitol with Bobby Seale. If you just do the Bobby Seale story, you don't go out on the street with Eldridge the night that Martin Luther King is killed and get into the whole shootout. Okay. So it allows us as a viewer to get into everything. Rotate. This is a clip. Storming.
Okay, so that was, I'm going to post a link here to that interview. Watch the entire interview. It's about 17 minutes. So what Melvin Van Peebles, the son, is explaining, now how many of you all saw the movie Panther? Came out in 1995. It starred Kadeem Hardison, Courtney Vance, Bokeem Woodbine, Kadeem Hardison, Dwayne Wayne, right? The character that Kadeem Hardison played, that was the central character, and he was a fictitious character, but he embodied a lot of real life people who were working class people who joined the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And through this fictitious character, they take you through some historical events. This is what Melvin Van Peebles was explaining. Also, the other DVD, I forgot to tell you in that bundle pack, this deals with the real history of Juneteenth. Juneteenth, history, Emancipation Day, but not Independence Day. We never got our 40 acres and a mule. And also deal with Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign. I deal with how Malcolm X was calling for a unification of the civil rights leaders while he was still in the Nation of Islam. Deal with why Abraham Lincoln was not an abolitionist. A lot of information here also. Okay, that's in that 6 DVD bundle pack. Forgot to tell you that. But this is dealing with the movie making progress when you deal with historical subject matter. These are not documentaries. And I'm a big fan of documentaries. I'm in 7 documentaries. I'm a big fan of documentaries. And as Jamon Jordan said on my November 3rd, 2019 show, the African History Network show, when we dealt with the film Harriet, he said he has a love-hate relationship with historical films because they're not 100% historically accurate. And I feel the same way. You know, I have a love-hate relationship with historical films, but I understand the movie-making process. also, and a lot of hoops they have to jump through to get movies made in Hollywood. So if we look at the original interview from November 1st, 2019, that Focus Features did with the screenwriter for Harriet, Gregory Allen Reed, who is African American, by the way. I don't know if I said that. Okay, you go to imdb.com, search for Harriet. He's African American, and Cassie Lemons, they're both African American. These were the screenwriters. Okay, I don't know where people got that white people wrote this, the script and all this stuff. Just like they were saying white people wrote the script for Black Panther. No, the script for Black Panther was written by two African American men, Joe Robert Cole and director Ryan Coogler. So I don't know where people are getting all this nonsense from. But after moving to Los Angeles to become a screenwriter in the 1990s, Gregory Allen Howard had a brilliant idea to turn the life of African-American icon Harriet Tubman into a kick-ass action adventure movie. Having studied her life as a history major at Princeton University, Gregory Allen Howard knew just how remarkable her story was. Unfortunately, it would take over 20 years before the stars aligned to bring it to the screen, okay? So this is a movie over 20 years in the making. In the meantime, Gregory Allen Howard brought other real stories to the screen, including the award-winning 2000 sports drama Remember the Titans, that was based upon a true story but wasn't 100% historically accurate, and the 2001 boxing biopic Ali, about Muhammad Ali. On November 1st, Gregory Allen Howard's vision of Harriet, with Cassie Lemons directing and Cynthia Erivo playing the legendary abolitionist and freedom fighter, will finally arrive in the theaters. We sat down with Howard to talk about how Harriet Tubman inspired him, finding the right actress to play her, and why Harriet's life still matters, Okay, so they asked the question, you've been working on this project for a long time. Can you give us a short history of Harriet? He said, Harriet, which was set up at Disney 26 years ago, was my first assignment. When I got in the business, I wanted to tell these historical stories by turning them into entertainment. I didn't want to give history lessons. I wanted to turn Harriet Tubman's life, which I had studied in college, into an action adventure movie. The climate in Hollywood, however, was very different back then. So he's talking about back in 1994. The climate in Hollywood, however, was very different back then. I was told how one studio head said in a meeting, quote, "This script is fantastic. Let's get Julia Roberts to play Harriet Tubman," end quote. When someone pointed out that Julia Roberts could not be Harriet Tubman, the executive responded, quote, "It was so long ago, no one is going to know the difference," end quote. Two films really changed the climate in Hollywood to allow Harriet to be made. 12 Years a Slave became a hit and did a couple of $100 million worldwide. And I told my agent, quote, you can't say this kind of story won't make money now, end quote. Then Black Panther really blew the doors open. Also, 12 Years a Slave opened the door for Selma to be made, okay, from Ava DuVernay. Selma, about the Selma to Montgomery March, and about the fight for this Voting Rights Act of 1965. Because David Oyelowo, who played Dr. King, there's an interview in the Root.com, had an article about this, and he talked about how because of the success of 12 Years a Slave, he said that opened the door for Selma to be made as well. Let's see. Let me see, there was something, so, okay, over the years, did your sense of who Harriet was change? Who made you feel Harriet Tubman would make a great movie? Okay, what made you feel Harriet Tubman would make a great movie? Even before I knew I was going to be a screenwriter, when I was a history major in college, I thought this was a corker of a story. Don't forget, she was the only female conductor on the Underground Railroad, and she never lost a passenger. Other conductors took larger groups, but would invariably lose people along the way. Her goal was never to lose anyone, but there was so much more. She was a spy. She was one of the first women to lead soldiers in battle. So she was actually the only woman to lead a military raid during the Civil War. June 2nd, 1863, the Combahee River raid in South Carolina. And that raid freed about 750 enslaved Africans, okay? She was also a spy for the Union Army during the Civil War. She was a nurse during the Civil War as well. But more than anything, this small woman single-handedly threatened the billion-dollar industry of slavery. Harriet was bigger than life. Harriet freeing slaves had a multiplying effect. Plantation owners were scared that enslaved people would start getting ideas. There were always more slaves than white people on the plantations in general, depending upon the size of the plantation. Depending upon the size of the plantation. In general, there were usually more enslaved Africans than white people, but a lot of white people only own 2, 3, maybe 4 enslaved Africans. Everybody didn't own, 200. Okay, so it depends upon the size of the plantation. Plantation owners were scared that enslaved people would start getting ideas. There were always more slaves than white people on the plantations, but those enslaved didn't know their own power. In some instances, now you will have different ways that enslaved Africans rebel. Learning to read and write was one way of rebelling, because in many states it was forbidden, except for Virginia, depending upon which time you're talking about. In Virginia, it was legal for slaves to learn to read and write up until 1831. 1831 was when the Nat Turner Rebellion, the Southampton County Rebellion, took place, and Nat Turner was literate. He could read and write, and he used the Bible as a tool to teach his people that they were supposed to be free. Whereas Harriet Tubman was illiterate. She could neither read nor write, okay? So this is one of the reasons why we have to rely upon more biographies about Harriet Tubman written by other people. Whereas with Frederick Douglass was literate, and Frederick Douglass wrote 3 autobiographies. So we can read Frederick Douglass' own writings about himself. Whereas with Harriet Tubman, we have to read writings of other people, other historians, things like this about Harriet Tubman. Now, there's a new book that just came out by an African-American female historian. Her name is Dr. Erica Armstrong Dunbar. Dr. Erica Armstrong Dunbar. The name of this book is called She Came to Slay. She Came to Slay. And I met the sister at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. I can't remember if I interviewed her, but look out for an interview soon, because I'm going to interview some African American female historians very soon, dealing with the film Harriet and dealing with the real history of Harriet Tubman also. So they go on to ask the next question: are all the characters in Harriet written from history? Or are all the characters in Harriet written from history? So Gregory Allen Howard said nearly all the characters are based on real people. Nearly all the characters are based on real people. The Brodess family was real. William Steele, played by Leslie Odom Jr., was a real person. William Steele was one of the men running the Underground Railroad, one of the main people running the Underground Railroad, and he was financing it also. Free African-American man, very wealthy. And he records the history of the Underground Railroad and publishes a book in 1872 called The Underground Railroad, which deals with the real history. And he recorded the names of the people who came through the Underground Railroad, the enslaved Africans. Now, a lot of the history he destroyed because he felt that it could lead to the people who were running the Underground Railroad being prosecuted, okay, because this is evidence, but there was still some history preserved, and he knew a lot of the history as well. Okay, so William Steele was a real person. In fact, Gregory Allen Howard said, I dated one of William Steele's descendants. I went to college in New Jersey where I met her. In every historical movie I've written, I've used some sort of compositing, time shifting, and compression. Okay, and this is what happens. You have a composite character. Oftentimes they create a composite character. So Marie Buchanan, played by Janelle Monáe, was a fictitious character, but it was a composite character because there were African-American women who were working on the Underground Railroad, helping hide runaway slaves, things like this. So they'll take those real actions that real people did and put that into the embodiment of a fictitious character. It's the same thing with Rosewood, directed by John Singleton. I think that was 97. The character of Man, played by Bing Rames, was a fictitious character. He's a former World War I veteran, okay? And he he uses military strategy to help the children and the women escape to freedom. It would escape to safety, escape to the next town. Man didn't exist, but most likely that was the embodiment of actions of real African-American men there in Rosewood, Florida. When you look at the character played by Don Cheadle in the movie Rosewood, a Sylvester Carrier. Okay, so in the movie, his mother is played by Florida Evans, Esther Rolle. Okay, she played the role of Aunt Sarah. Aunt Sarah was a real person also. In the movie, he hides in the coffin of his mother, Aunt Sarah, who was killed on her front porch, and he's smuggled out of the town. Okay, well, that's not what happened in real life. In real life, he didn't get out the town. In real life, he was shot and killed after they shot and killed his mother, Aunt Sarah, because they shoot and kill his mother, Aunt Sarah, on her front porch. He shoots two of the white deputies. They shoot and kill him. Okay, but to get the movie made, for it to be a theatrical movie, they had to take some poetic license with it, because if they told the real story of Rosewood, nobody would have gone and seen the movie. If they told the real story of Rosewood. Now, you did have women and children get to safety because the character played by John Voight, I forgot his name, but the character played by John Voight, who was the general store owner there, and he and his family, they were the only white people who lived in Rosewood, okay? It was a predominantly African-American town. That was true. He was a real character. And the two men that owned the train, the two white men that own the train who come in and take out the women and children on the train, they were real also. That happened, okay? So with all these movies, none of them are 100% accurate. Even if it says based on a true story, that doesn't mean the movie is 100% accurate. It means the story that it's based upon is 100% accurate or 90% accurate, what have you. But Gregory Allen Howard talked about the character of Marie Buchanan, played by Janelle Monáe. He said, Marie Buchanan was a composite character created from a range of real figures. In the North, there were many free women who owned homes where the slaves would stay. Okay, so once again, this is a composite character. When you deal with Hollywood movies, this is how they tell the stories. And when you research this and watch we go deep into this in my November 3rd, 2019 show of the African History Network show. We posted the link here. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube channel Michael Imhotep. It's on Facebook, the African History Network, and we're going to rebroadcast it also. For instance, I gave numerous articles dealing with real history, dealing with Harriet Tubman. You can use these in schools, use these with your children, use these with your family. But if we look at the article from the New York Times, October 23rd, 2019, entitled Harriet Tubman, Facts and Myths, How the Movie Tried to Get It Right. They talk about, in this article, the filmmakers poured over books, documents, and other research to remind viewers of the woman behind the often distorted legend. So what they'll do is they'll take the actions of real historical figures from their research and put that into the embodiment of a fictitious character. Let's see here. Okay, so you can read the rest of this interview. We're going to post a link here. This is from focusfeatures.com article interview. This is Print the Legend, Writing the Screenplay for Harriet. Okay, so a lot of people are going crazy from the headlines and things like this. Oh, some people talking about Julia Roberts. Why did she get all the roles? What have you? Now, there's no evidence that Julia Roberts was contacted. No evidence she was called. She probably don't even know what the hell happened. Why am I trending on Twitter and social media? What did I do? Okay, but I saw it. I read it. I said, I said, this is Hollywood. This is back in 1994. Things were totally different back then in 94 also. It was dumb, but hey, I've seen dumber things happen in Hollywood, or some people call it Hollyweird. All right, let's go to, we'll go to some of your questions here in just a minute. All right, so African-American business owners, post name your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We have some new advertisers. Okay, visit workingwithjohnray.com, workingwithjohnray.com. John Ray teaches about a concept called income shifting, how to free up money in your budget to do the things that you want to do with it. He has videos that you can watch as well. Visit his website, workingwithjohnray.com. Okay, we're going to post this information here. And he has also a special offer right now as well. Okay, let them know you found out about this on the African History Network. If you're looking to buy a new or used car, visit Car Marshall. Click on the link below, and Car Marshall will help you find and negotiate buying a new vehicle. They have over 100,000 new and used cars from dealers. Car Marshall, you shop, we negotiate. You shop, we negotiate. Okay, now a lot of people want to are looking at investing, right? And we know the new year's coming up, and a lot of people have seen the article from the profit dealing with the profitroom.com, which was featured by blacknews.com, the first black-owned day trading company of its kind, is teaching courses on how to profit from the stock market. Okay, so the Profit Room is a stock market, trading, and education company. They have mentorship programs that are designed for beginners just like yourself. They teach individuals how to create generational wealth through trading and investing in the financial markets. They teach about stocks, options, futures, the foreign exchange markets or the Forex market. Their specialty is teaching about day trading and providing one-on-one mentorship. Visit their website, theprofitroom.com, theprofitroom.com for more information. And also check out the article about the Profit Room at blacknews.com. Okay, African-American business owners, post name your business here on the thread of the broadcast. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. We have a few more slots left. And in addition to our videos on Facebook and YouTube, we also take your 30-second and 60-second commercial and put into the audio podcast of our various broadcasts. We're on 8 different podcast platforms: iTunes, Acast, FM Player, TuneIn, Castbox as well. So email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. All right, let's look at some of your comments here. Black History, love it. Nana said, okay, we've got Dawn Seawright in New York City, Ganja, peace and love, my brothers and sisters. Let's see who else we have here. Okay, we got Ashley Jones, we have Marnice Warren, Harriet, just a few of the people watching. Everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. All right, so research this information. Follow us here on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, okay? Turn on the notifications so you know when we go live. And then also follow us on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, so we know Kwanzaa is coming up, Dr. King Day is coming up in January, African American History Month is coming up in February. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, email me at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, okay? We'll make it happen. I have a fantastic Kwanzaa presentation because I deal with the African origins of Kwanzaa and the first fruit harvest African festivals that Kwanzaa is based upon. Then I tie this into the film Black Panther. I tie this into what's going on today. So my Kwanzaa presentations look a lot different than a lot of presentations that people traditionally see dealing with Kwanzaa. I'll be speaking at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History on the second day of Kwanzaa, Kuji Chagalia, which means self-determination. That's on December 27th. That Kwanzaa celebration is organized by the Malcolm X grassroots movement, Brother Bomani, Sister Shoshana, and that whole organization. I guess this is my 5th year speaking for them at Kwanzaa, so I guess I'm doing something right. But it's free and open to the public. They're doing the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History is celebrating Kwanzaa for the first 4 days. So the event on December 27th, I guess it's 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. So I'll be there. You don't want to miss my presentation. And if you want me to do a presentation for a group or organization, whether it's inside the state of Michigan, Metro Detroit, out of state, email me at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, and we'll make it happen, all right? And my African American History Month presentations blow people away. I mean, I just did my presentation on Black migrations, 1619 to 2019, at Hartford Memorial Baptist Church for their social justice ministry. And I deal with some of that because that was the annual theme for African American History Month for this year. And it's a theme to be studied and celebrated all year long. I dealt with some of the history of African American History Month, as well as dealing with Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who co-founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, September 9th, 1915 in Chicago. He wrote a number of books. His most well-known book is The Miseducation of the Negro, which came out in 1933. And Dr. Woodson also created the journal Negro History in 1916, but he also created the Associated Publishers, Inc. publishing company in 1921. So he was publishing his books, he was publishing books by other historians, but they were also publishing textbooks for our schools and for HBCUs, okay? Associated Publishers, Inc. So this was a bad brother. Very, very much underrated, okay? Dr. Carter G. Woodson. All right, let's look at some of the other questions and then we'll get out of here. All right, Jesse Brown, okay, from the Detroit Holistic Center. How you doing, Jesse? All right, I'm gonna have to bring Jesse on for an interview sometime soon. Okay, Ganja, all right. Then also, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. That helps us to keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay the bills, helps finance our Sunday night show. We'll be on, so we're normally on each Sunday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show. We're on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, so I'm usually in the studios, unless they're playing NFL football, which preempts my show, or Major League Baseball, which preempts my show. So for the next couple of weeks, I know I will be, then we broadcast on Facebook Live as well. Next couple of weeks we'll broadcast, but I'll probably be in this studio as opposed to the radio station studio because we're coming up on the holidays as well, but that's not going to stop me from getting the information out, okay? All right, let's see here. Okay, so look, hey, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. And then people check out my shirt also. You see Harriet Tubman in the middle. This is the shirt honoring African-American female legends, okay? And then also, you know, I forgot to tell you, a lot of people asked about this when I was at Hartford Memorial Baptist Church this past weekend for the Holiday Bazaar. I have my 4-hour presentation, Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. It's a 2-DVD set, 4-hour presentation where I deal with great African women in our history from all different time periods. These are just a few of the women that I deal with. Also deal with Harriet Tubman as well. Okay, so you can order this at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. They make great gifts as well, great Kwanzaa gifts. And while you're at it, get Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 4.5-hour presentation. It's a 2-DVD set. It's about 7 years of research. And the online course that I teach on this subject, it evolved from this lecture I did back in January 2014, okay? But so a lot of people, I get compliments on this shirt wherever I go. This was a shirt, if you must know, it was a gift given to me by Herb Alchemist. Okay, so it's a long story. But anyway, this is a gift. You see Herb Alchemist, Britain, you see her videos here on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, and the sister Kateria knows. But this is a great shirt. Even have Michelle Obama on here. you know. And, you know, I'll take Micheaux over who's in the White House right now, definitely. But you got Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, you got Nina Simone, you got Zora Neale Hurston on here, Harriet Tubman, Ella Baker, who co-founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in 1957, along with Dr. King. And Dr. King was a sexist, so she and Dr. King didn't get along too well. That was one of the reasons why. You got Angela Davis. So yeah, a lot of people don't know Dr. King was, you know, a bit of a sexist, like a lot of Baptist male ministers and things like that. Just like what's his name? William Monroe Trotter, going back another generation, a couple generations before that, maybe. William Monroe Trotter and Ida B. Wells didn't get along too well because William Monroe Trotter didn't believe that women belonged in the movement. Okay, and Ida B. Wells wasn't having that. You got Ida B. Wells right here, Coretta Scott King. You have Rosa Parks, all right? And right in the center, you have Harriet Tubman, one of the original ride or die chicks. Okay, Harriet Tubman. You know, they just need Fannie Lou Hamer on here. Fannie Lou Hamer and Sojourner Truth, because those are like the Fantastic Four of the original ride or die chicks. Sojourner Truth, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ida B. Wells, and Harriet Tubman, because all of them had guns. Okay. All of them had guns. All right. Okay, let's see here. All right, so well, look, hey, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.